Minions, tonight we steal the moon? No. Teyvat. Teyvat? More like Tay-flat. Am I right? Because this was a running theory for years. Yeah, so how far we've come, huh? If you were to time travel back to 1.0 and tell a player that we're on the moon now, I think they might have said, when pigs fly. Wait a minute, that pig really is flying. The world of Teyvat and its map has evolved so much in these almost 6 years now. All the way back in 2020, on the 28th of September, this small game by the name of Genshin Impact came out. And with it, we had the regions of Mondstadt and Liyue. And I mean, back then, we thought this was gigantic. You can walk all the way from Mondstadt to Liyue, but if you look back from where we are now, the 1.0 map was like a puny shroom boar sizing up to a, venerable jadestone turtle? Anyway, we've had so much since those humble beginnings. From Dragonspine's high peaks, Sumeru's vast desert, to all the underground and in between. Each new expansion or region, however big or small, literally growing the world alongside us players. You know the one common thread though? Between any change in the map, there always has to be a hole somewhere. So today, we are going to go through each map addition and explore the when, where, what, and why of it all. Patch 1.0. Being the release of the game and all, it added the largest amount of things in a single patch. Mondstadt, Liyue, and their respective Archon quests were all available from the get-go, although the Liyue Archon quest hadn't yet concluded. 11 story quests, 22 characters, it was the time of and fish blasting. Back then, Ruin Guards were the scariest enemies on the block. It brought us some of the most iconic and nostalgic locations. Mondstadt City, Springvale, Stormterror's Lair, that would be blocked off until you get to a certain point of the Archon quest. And then if you follow the path into Liyue, there's Wangshu Inn, Qingce Village, and of course, Liyue Harbour. Now interestingly, you could also access the Alcor over at Guyun Stone Forest from release, and still get the resulting quest after boarding. However, it wasn't until patch 2.3 that the ship icon was added and acted as a waypoint. Patch 1.1 is when the Liyue Archon quest officially came to a close, with a new star approaches, the time of nerfs and big dongjong buffs. And now you might be wondering why we're even in this patch. B, there was no map addition here. Actually, technically there was. The Golden House was added to the world and its map. Before 1.1, it was just a waterfall and this single tree in the middle. But with 1.1 came the child boss and its domain. However, the map part of the area wasn't actually changed until 1.2. There were a few smaller things too. For one, they added it so that when you zoom out, you can see your exploration progress. But also, there was a small yet still chilling change that had players freaking out. They covered up the hole to the cryo-registine. I know. Unacceptable really. But don't worry guys, have no fear. They added it back in 1.2. Patch 1.2, the Dragonspine was added, the game's first map addition, and it certainly received quite a frosty reception, mainly due to the sheer cold, and every player's rite of passage, this cave with the Abyss Mages. Before this, Dragonspine looked like this, and a lot of connecting pieces of land received a makeover too. This section on the north side and south, where Minion Village was, weren't accessible before. Dragonspine's addition also meant that many players thereafter would end up heading through here rather than, you know, the road to get to Liyue. On that same note, there was a quest added in 5.0 that appears after completing Tomorrow Without Tears, where we meet an adventurer near Dawn Winery, and the quest leads us to Stone Gate. Whether these two things are related though, who's to say? That is a path that leads nowhere. Did someone say Path to Nowhere? Our sponsor for today's video. Path to Nowhere is a real-time strategy RPG set in a chaotic metropolis. You play as the chief of the Minos Bureau of Crisis Control, where you personally track down and contain powerful individuals with extraordinary abilities, the Sinners, and use their powers to uncover the secrets of the world's corruption. This gacha game gem has beautiful art, visuals, and storytelling, and this new version, Pale Blue Firmament, brings 2 new main story chapters and 3 new characters. We have Celine, a premier attack speed support with a very elegantly refined design. She's the new SSR Sinner, head librarian of the Central Library, a brilliant scholar who knows countless secrets about this city's past. Her mysterious neutral attitude makes her one of the most intriguing characters in this update. Isomer, a magic DPS carry, and Pixel, a boss-focused single-target DPS who has a very cool and unique look. 5 characters are receiving buffs, and there's new attires too. Kokelix one in particular is stunning, changing her identity from that of a gentle gardener to an ancient vampire's primordial ruler. Now is the perfect time to get back into Path to Nowhere, as there are 24 plus free pulls, free Pines attire, a selectable S-rank character too, so click the link in the description to download the game. With all that said, let's get back to the video. Patch 1.3 added the Primo Geovish app. Now, as is the case with a few different bosses, the landscape was changed after. Beforehand, there was nothing here, no hole here, no entrance this side, so both the world and the map were changed for this. And patch 1.4, during the first Windbloom Festival, they fixed a section near Boo Boo Pharmacy. That's always good, because otherwise people wouldn't have known there was a bridge here. Patch 1.5 gave us 5-star character Madam Ping's Teapot, Eula's Sneeze, and Ajdaha's Butt. Just as with the Geovish app area, the terrain around Ajdaha's Butt was also moved, so we could now enter to fight our first new weekly boss since Child. Also one minuscule map change. They removed debris from the map next to the hidden palace of Guizhong Formula, but not just this. 1.5 was a very important patch for map kind, because it added map tabs. What we are so used to now did not always exist. Guys, I kind of have to see to this child's every whims and go on this vacation to a very apple-shaped set of islands, or Alice will rain fire down on me. Patch 1.6, Golden Apple Archipelago, a temporary reprieve before the eternity of Inazuma enveloped us. This patch brought us our first summer event and outside map edition. The archipelago used to be known as the Har Islands, according to Venti, and were created when he was reshaping the terrain of Mondstadt, so the cliffs split off, ending up as the archipelago we see today. Although it doesn't belong to any nation, and we don't really know for sure where it's located, other than somewhere east of Mondstadt. This is where players were introduced to a new mechanic, the Wave Rider system, something that would become useful later when Inazuma dropped, and then by the time Natlan came around, completely forgotten. But alas, as with every subsequent summer event map until Natlan, it wouldn't last forever. Genshin had been out for almost an entire year at this point, and on July 21st, 2021, we got our first full region expansion of the game. We had befriended the Crux crew back in 1.6, and they took us on a cutscene journey. Inazuma, land of Her Excellency, the almighty Narukami Agosho, God of Thunder. It is here that we would arrive, only to be stuck on Rito Island due to an ongoing civil war, one we would kind of become embroiled in. And this whole vision hunt decree thing, you'll be inlaid upon this statue, Ayaka's wet socks, and the wait is over, my comrades. But more importantly, 2.0 gave us bucket loads of map changes, 3 new islands, and a hydratingly large amount of water between Inazuma and the mainlands. Anyway, after the map was opened up to us by progressing through the story, we had access to some pretty iconic places. Narukami Shrine, that place you always wonder how any normal person can access, Kamisato Estate, Inazuma City, Tatarasuna, and
Man, I'm dead.
Orobashi. Also, with Inazuma out, this meant even more map space to place pins. Oh, what's this? An island on the map that doesn't actually exist? Well, good thing they got rid of it in 2.1, or the Shogun would have hunted us down herself. But then also in that same breath, they have islands in Inazuma that don't show up on the map, so tomato tomato. With the release of patch 2.1, we were given the conclusion to Inazuma's Archon quest by dueling Signora in front of the throne and her kind of... With all of Inazuma's people and their wishes, we made Raiden realize, wait a minute, maybe I should touch some grass. Aside from that, it gave us 2 new areas, Watatsumi Island and Seirai Island. So the Wave Rider was kind of relevant for a bit again, Watatsumi Island in particular still being one of my personal favourite locations, surrounded by waterfalls and floating jellyfish, while underneath it lurks, well, that's something we'll get to in a moment. Fishing also washed ashore in this patch, so that meant new map pins, as well as, is it another another Paimon getting stuck in everyone's heads. Patch 2.2 was indeed another island, Surumi, an island covered in fog and with a very mysterious and messed up past for us to uncover in a world quest. And after completing said quest and bawling your eyes out, the fog finally clears, but that's the only thing on this map that changes. So there was this main island, but it did add some smaller islands in between everything else, I suppose to fill in the empty space, but the only interesting thing it has on it is a one-time domain. Patch 2.3 didn't bring any map additions, but it did finally add the Alcor as a point of interest on the map, and 2.4 brought back the Jade Chamber after completing the new Archon quest, the one where we help with rebuilding it after it was destroyed during the Osial fight, and where we fight his wife.
Oh my god, I can't believe my eyes.
The map tab was further refined too, so that each individual region has its own tab. Patch 2.4 gave us a huge map expansion too. Underneath Watatsumi Island, if we just flush the toilet, lies Enkanomiya, a very old, long-abandoned civilization that used to worship Istaroth and Orobashi, and was part of the unified civilization. Enkanomiya was our first separate map, one that wasn't directly connected to the rest of Teyvat, and that was permanent, and it was purely world quest related, so what's more, wasn't necessarily a required region to unlock. That is, unless you needed the mats. Nothing much happened in 2.5 in regards to the map, aside from the main event, where it was temporarily changed due to the encroaching corruption. This is also where we got this iconic line.
I mean, I totally did betray them.
Patch 2.6, however, gave us a 2-in-1, an above-ground map addition and an underground one. A sizable chunk of Western Liyue was added to the map. Lumberpick Valley, which is where most of the miners that turned into treasure hoarders ended up going after the chasm was shut, although they didn't connect the roads up from here to here. And then there's the hole itself. At least the main entrance has a connecting road. And guards too. Who remembers the myth though, of Yao Yao and Baiju will lead us into the chasm? Genshin history lesson for you guys. But huge shout out to this channel because they have a video showing us the before and after of the chasm and the famous single dendro slime. Even then you could kind of see the general shape they had going though. With the chasm came a world quest where we, the one and only traveller, were put to work in order to solve what was causing all the accidents at the mine, and turns out it was abyss corruption that was affecting the celestial nail right at the bottom, so we had to purify it. One quick change in 2.7, the ruins where the Guizhong Ballista is located were added to the map, and so the summer event rolls around once more. And once again, we have Golden Apple Archipelago. This time though, it's had a bit of a makeover. Each isle was basically turned into a representation of each character's arc that we go through in the story. As with every summer event, it kind of hinted towards Sumeru's arc, because turns out everything was but a dream. Did someone say dreams? Well, with 3.0's release, we are standing in the very land of dreams. The introduction of a very new element, Dendro. But who cares about that? Clearly, the most important part of this new region was the addition of the most infamous World Quest series and adorable vegetables, the Aranara, onion, radish? And these two areas don't show up on the map until you get further into the Aranara quest. This questline quickly became iconic. Whether a good or bad thing depends on your opinion, but needless to say, it's stayed in players' minds since then. We did also get a new waypoint over at the chasm, including a new tunnel, which is meant to be the main entrance into Sumeru, although many people did also end up heading in from the mountaintop too. The waypoint thing is a trend we would continue to see going forward for every new region release. The addition of Sumeru also meant that this section of Liyue was expanded to connect the two nations. However, adding on to this, the northern border of Sumeru was cut off, and of course there was no Vader Harbour yet. But we also got some stunning locations. A sprawling city sat atop a giant tree, truly towers over the entire region, just don't slip. Port Ormus on this banger, our first huge ruin guard, and Aranara village. Now, one other change that we got in 3.0 was Celestia. There was this whole thing with Celestia up in the sky in earlier patches where it was tilted, which they then fixed, but in 3.0 it got an entirely new look. The thing with previous nations is that the map never changed with events that happened during quests. Think Dunyu Ruins when we empty it of water, but this started to change with Sumeru, especially in the desert, which is the region we got in patch 3.1, and this is only the first part of the desert. The Mausoleum, the second giant ruin guard, Aru village, a continuation of the Archon quest.
I left Sumeru But I also stayed in Sumeru.
And the Golden Slumber World quest. Speaking of, this is the first quest that actually substantially changes anything on the map. Once you reach this point, the first time you meet Jet and her father, the road has been caved in and it becomes a pit, which is also reflected on the map. The same goes for these ruins. After making it through the quest and revealing Deshret's throne room, it stays like this. Some smaller changes map-wise include, unrelatedly, the dock to the east of Boo Boo Pharmacy being added to the map. I don't know how people found this dock beforehand then. And also the ruins of Dari being adjusted a bit. Patches 3.2 and 3.3 didn't bring any new map areas. 3.2 added the Scaramouche boss though, so there was a slight alteration in the terrain. And there was also the Cat's Tail and TCG, which was added in 3.3. But patch 3.4 blew sand in our eyes again. We got the Desert of Hadramaveth. And you know what this means? The conclusion to the Jet World Quest series. And, well, we don't talk about this bit. This also added the final giant ruin guard, which we actually get to control during the aforementioned world quests. And it ends up moving from one side of the desert to the other, so its location does also get updated on the map. Plus we got the Oasis, so it's got to be up there for one of the patches of all time. This patch is where they added marker icons on the waypoints, so you know whether it's inside or outside. However, the layered map wouldn't come till later, so there was a point in time during the entire Sumeru cycle where you had to navigate and explore all of the desert regions without layered maps. Let that sink in. Patch 3.5 didn't have any new additions, well, unless we count the Hexenzirkel Island, because the Wind Bloom event of this patch was the first time we saw it, but it didn't stay, and only showed back up permanently once the chest boss was added. 3.6 gave us our last desert expansion, the Girdle of Sands. This desert update introduced more variety in terms of landscape, and oh my Archon, if this bubble tree area isn't one of the most beautiful spots. This area was important too, as it took us to the border of Sumeru and would be our way into Fontaine. Since this update dropped, this door has continued to haunt us all. And since the world quest we do with Sorush also involves some pretty monumental changes to the landscape, this is again reflected on the map. This patch finally released Baiju as well, so we got his story quest at the same time, and this added something new onto a very old area. This house, and a few other additions near Chingsa village, but on the map they only added the house itself. Patch 3.8, Bottle Land. A replacement for the summer event, a spot that had previously belonged to the Golden Apple Archipelago. But this was once again Klee's domain. All we had to do was rub a magic bottle and we were in Verulian Mirage, a beautiful theme park with a suspicious amount of hydro eidolons. The bottle is basically this thing that some people end up finding in the desert and they get transported into the domain. Then when they leave, Idia creates hydro forms of them to carry out her wishes. And by the end of the quest, she reveals that she herself is an Oceanid. So once again, we're getting sneak peeks into what we can expect to see in Fontaine. Speaking of water, this next region wouldn't just be adding land, but a whole load of water and new gameplay elements. But we'll be going over all of that and the other regions in the next episode of this series.